Hi folks, this video is going to be helpful because as you're probably all working through your A2 prep tool, the back side of the assignment asks you to start kind of outlining how you might want your arguments to look, stating reasons, and then supporting those reasons with evidence. So this video is going to kind of start getting us in the direction of how we can use evidence and synthesize evidence in a way that develops our paragraphs, so our paragraphs just don't come off of a bundle of facts or just pieces of evidence that aren't really developed or strung together. So we're going to start out by thinking about how we're not just going to collect our research, but organize it in a way that makes sense and that gets these different perspectives and different pieces of evidence from different sources kind of talking to each other in a conversation. So imagine we have three sources, and one source is from X, one source is from Y, and one source is from Z. You want to kind of imagine these sources as people talking to one another in a conversation. They are literally conversing with each other. They have their own perspectives, they have their own bias, they have their own agendas, and they're coming together underneath the issue and the topic that you are choosing to write about. So our goal is to try to figure out, what's the relationship between these sources during this conversation that they're having. And we are kind of playing, matchmaker here. We're getting people together and trying to get them to think through these ideas. And how are they going to interact with each other? That's the main question. We're trying to figure out sources of ways in which they're going to interact. Can they build upon each other? Will they work in the same direction? Will they repel? What might be missing? Some of these questions we can ask. What would a conversation between these two authors look like? So that's where we start. What do these two authors have in common? Oh, I'm sorry, that should be three. So we're talking about three sources here. So what are these authors, what are these sources having in common? What values are they sharing? What values do they not share? How might that influence what they're writing? Are they agreeing on things? Why are they disagreeing on these? What perspectives are they coming from that are enabling them to disagree on things? What points of concern do they have with each other's arguments? That's a great one to think about. How do they relate to each other? What points can you find to string them together? That's kind of what you were asked to do in your annotated bibliography. Then you can ask, what gaps in their argument do you see? What is missing? Where can you fill it in when they're, if you're trying to string these sources together in ways that they relate, in ways that they're conversing, what gaps are there in the conversation that you can see that you might need to go do more research or might need to fill in? So the point of this is to kind of start aligning things. You can start to explain that alignment to the audience in effective ways, and this kind of gets back to what we were talking about with development, which is what we're going to explore next. So development is how we choose as writers to elaborate on our main ideas. If we recall, development for us involves evidence and explanation. I was trying to get us to move away from the term commentary because explanation, I feel like, does a better job of showing how we have to take our evidence and explain it directly, how it relates to our topic sentences and how it supports our reasons, which are supporting our thesis statement in that way. And also explanation is that point where, we start to wrap it all together. We start to explain it and form an argument and put it together in one sort of developed, cohesive paragraph. And this is really our way of connecting the dots. So develop it for audience because we're doing the heavy lifting to help your audience connect the dots and understand its connection to your claim. You want to really, really be clear in why you are including the evidence and what that is working towards. That is going to be really, really, really important for the effectiveness of your argument and its ability to be accepted by your audience. So, a nice way to think about this is an evidence sandwich. I've been making some pretty good waffle sandwiches recently. It's cheap and there's always waffle mix. So if you make those or substitute with whatever sandwich that you like, this will be relevant. So first we're going to introduce the evidence, and then we're going to add our quote, and then we're going to analyze the evidence or explain the evidence. So we're going to think about this first, introducing the evidence as context. You want to kind of give your reader some background as to where this fits in. It can be a sentence that shows how this is related. A lot of the times your evidence will already be grouped under a topic sentence, and that kind of establishes the context of the evidence you're going to include, as you will see in the sample paragraph that we're going to look at shortly. And then we bring it in with the quote. So we establish the context, then we attribute the quote with an author tag. Usually, remember, if it's the first time we're using that source, we want to do it narratively, where we establish the credentials of the author, and then we move on and introduce that. And then we want to put in our analysis and explanation. So this is our opportunity to explain the importance of that source in the grand scheme of the paragraph and ultimately the grand scheme of the paper. So let's take a look at an example of this then. So the claim here is that all U.S. states should pass laws that make texting while driving a primary offense. So keep that in mind. I'm going to pause the video for you to read through the reasons and evidence, and feel free to pause it as well, and feel free to pause it at any time to make sure that you're getting the information down and repeat the information. So I'm going to pause it real quick and read through that, and then we'll continue. So this first example implements those three pieces of evidence, but as we recall in class, these pieces of evidence really just kind of are standalone. The only points of commentary are very, very minimal, as you can see in this next example of where all the pieces of evidence are crossed out. We only get a couple points where making texting while driving would decrease traffic deaths. That's a striking number. Clearly, this is a primary offense is a good idea. There's no really explanation, no development, no showing how these sources are conversing with each other. So take a second here to pause the video and read through this paragraph to refamiliarize yourself with what it presents. As you probably have noticed, there's a lot more explanation and development going on in this paragraph. As we see that the claim at the top, the first line states the main claim of the essay, states should make texting while driving a primary offense. Then we work into the reason, because such a law would decrease traffic deaths, and there's plenty of proof to support this fact. So right from the start, we know that this paragraph is going to be about the proof that supports the reason that laws would decrease traffic deaths. We then recognize that there's three pieces of evidence throughout this paragraph noted in the change of font color. Something that this paragraph does very well is that it brings three different perspectives and three different pieces of evidence. And we have Partell, we have Johnstone, and we have the article titled Texting. If we recall, a way to increase our credibility as writers is to draw from different perspectives, meaning different sources, different people's stakes in the issue, different people's writings about this. So this article does a really good job of doing that, and it works to string them together underneath the reason that a law would decrease traffic deaths, and there's plenty of proof to support this fact. This is then noted through these, this is then developed through these well, one of the ways it's developed is through these kind of transition words, additionally and furthermore down here. That's a really, really good indication and a really good strategy if you're trying to group together multiple sources and synthesizing them to show how they align in supporting one topic sentence and one reason. They're all working together. They're not conflicting with each other. And another indicator at a strong development in this paragraph is that after each piece of evidence, the author takes the time to wrap the piece of evidence back into the larger grand scheme of the paper and showing how it supports the reasons and the main thesis statement. That comes in particularly well where it starts, these dangers could be mitigated with stronger laws, drawing that claim right back to the thesis statement. So to recap, we talked about how it's really important not just to collect evidence, but to work on synthesizing that evidence, thinking about those pieces of evidence as real people talking and conversing, how they're going to talk to each other and align, how we can form some comprehensive conglomerate of ideas that work together to support one thesis. We talked about how development is important to explain that and different strategies in which to guarantee our credibility as a writer by drawing from different perspectives and many sources and using transition words to relate it all together. If you have any questions about any of this, or you want to send me an email with a sample paragraph that you're working on or anything like that, shoot me an email. I'm around. But yeah, happy writing.